if you have kids like I do, especially teens, then stop what you're doing, grab paper and pen, and get ready to take a deep dive into one of the topics that I feel as a parent is so important. And that's teaching our kids about finances and exposing them to entrepreneurship. Now, I have with me today author, speaker, and high school teacher, Mr. Dan Sheiks. So, Dan, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, Jeff, and talk to your audience about money and the book and everything else.
So you and I are in the group Go Abundance together, and I saw on our forum recently that you as you just mentioned, you've got this new book out called First to a Million: A Teenager's Guide to Achieving Financial Freedom, which we're going to get into more detail a little bit later. But when I saw the title, I immediately said two things to myself. Number one, I've got to get the book in the hands of my 14 and my 16-year-old. And then number two, I've got to reach out and hopefully get an interview with Dan. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. And I know that you're on a lot of YouTube, interviews like this, podcasts, and I know you're really busy. So I really appreciate you being here.
I'm always willing to talk to anybody about this kind of stuff. It's my passion. And so I love talking about it, I love spreading the message, and definitely appreciate you having me on.
Okay. Well, I'm real curious. So tell me about how really you got into teaching high school kids in the first place, and then pivoting to the personal finance and entrepreneurship space with them.
Yeah, my background was I got my undergraduate degree is a business degree with a marketing emphasis, and then when I graduated college, I really just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I started traveling, and I did that for a few years, really, until like my mid 20s. In that process, kind of grew up a little bit and got, I think, matured a little bit, and realized that I saw myself doing something that was more meaningful than me just making a lot of money for me. Similar to like a doctor, a physician, where it's kind of a service-based profession, and teaching is as well. And so once I found out, and I didn't know this, I never knew this until my mid 20s, that there were business classes and marketing classes in high school. I didn't know that. My high school didn't have those. Once I found out that that was a thing, then it was a pretty quick jump to, oh, I think I'd like to be a high school teacher, and I'd like to teach business and marketing in high school. And so I went back to school, I think around age 26 or 27, to get my teaching certificate in the state of Colorado, where I now live in Denver, Colorado. And then I started teaching at age 29. So, later than most would begin their career. But that's just how it worked out for me.
What do you think actually brought you into teaching? Kind of how'd you get interested into it?
Yeah, it was more some college friends. I never ever considered being a teacher until I was in my mid to late 20s. I used to make fun of my friends in college who were going to college to become teachers, because again, I was a business major, and I thought, why would you ever want to be a teacher? That you're working with, kids all day, and you're never going to make any good money. It didn't sound like something I would be interested in at, when I was 18, 19 years old. So once again, so I had some friends that were teachers, and they really liked their job. They loved their job. They found it very fulfilling and very rewarding as I, talked to them, and we remained friends after college. And so when I did love traveling, and that was what I was doing in my early 20s. And so I kind of, teaching seemed like a good fit, because I would feel fulfilled, at least I expected to, and I still could travel in the summers, right? And kind of fix that, do that activity, which was a passion of mine. And yeah, I wouldn't say there was like a moment in time when I was like, ooh, teaching is going to be a profession that I'm going to love. It was more of, I think I'll just give this a try and see how it goes, which honestly, I think when most young people go to college right out of high school, it's the same mindset of, I don't really know if this is exactly what I want to do, but I'm going to study it anyway, and we'll just see how this works out. And that's kind of the way I went into teaching, is I hope it's something I want to do, but I don't really know, but we're gonna give it a try.
Looking back, I really wish I'd have had exposure to, some of these different types of classes, you're talking about, especially like entrepreneurship. 'Cause I know like in some of the local colleges here, I know other colleges they offer that. There's actually one here at my uh, local college, ULM, University of Louisiana Monroe, and they've asked me to come and speak. And man, I would have loved to been able to to have that exposure. So can you share with us maybe some of the topics, kind of around the entrepreneurship, maybe some of the main ones that you teach on like on a day-to-day basis to these kids?
Sure. In the entrepreneurship class, which is called,
Yeah.
it's the class is officially called Introduction to Entrepreneurship, and it's a class that I teach high school seniors. And it's interesting that at the same time they get college credit, because it's what we call a concurrent enrollment class. So it's a college level class that they can take in high school and get college credit for at the same time. So
Hmm.
it's a cool thing for the kids, for the students. So it's basic stuff, but we talk about the idea of finding a problem, finding an issue that people are dealing with that they wish could be solved, and then finding a solution and bringing it to the marketplace, fixing problems. And if you can bring value to the marketplace with something that's needed or wanted by a group of people, then it can be a viable business. And so we walk through some brainstorming exercises, and we vet different ideas and decide if that would be something that could be profitable or not. And then ultimately they pick an actual idea, and then they do some market research, and they write out what would be considered maybe parts of a business plan. It's a semester long course, so we don't have a ton of time to dive into everything. And then they make a presentation, like a hypothetical presentation, to some potential investors at the end, and they make some promotional, like a commercial and some social media posts to promote their grant, what would be their grand opening. It's a lot of fun. The students get to be very, very creative, and they also, I think, see the value, because it's very real world skills to be able to start a business or formulate a plan that would potentially make some profit.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, I was kind of looking back and counting. I went through 25 years of formal education, 12 years of grade school, college, dental school, residency. And really at no point did I have any class or anything, about what the whole purpose of school is, right? To get a job and to make money. I never had anything about handling money. So, I mean, you being a teacher, do you have any idea why that's not maybe in some of the different curriculums out there? It seems pretty important to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's extremely important. And we're kind of switching gears here, which is a good thing. I think I know exactly why personal finance isn't taught in schools or isn't more emphasized in formal education. And it's not one reason. There's a few reasons that kind of all play a role. I've taught a class called personal finance. Entrepreneurship is one class. I teach different classes. Another one is personal finance, and it's a semester long course as well. It's an elective. In my opinion, that should be a requirement for high school graduation, that every single student takes that one semester personal finance class.
I agree.
And I've been advocating for that for years, with not much success. When you boil it down, it comes down to two main reasons. There's some more lower level reasons, but the two main reasons are money and politics. And that's unfortunately what it boils down to. If you look at the money thing, so there are a few states, and by a few, I mean less than 10. And then even in my state of Colorado, so there are a few states that require a personal finance class for high school graduation. Colorado's not one of them. That's where I'm at. But even in the state of Colorado, school districts and schools themselves can choose to do that. And a few in Colorado have. And kudos to all of them for realizing the importance. But my high school and my school district do not require the class. It's an elective. I think everyone's aware that public education in our country is severely underfunded. And it gets worse every year, not better. And so school districts and schools just simply don't have the money to take on another requirement, because that would involve buying some textbooks and hiring some additional staff that have that can teach personal finance, because not everyone can. And schools are interested in adding more to their budget when they are so in the red already. And so that's a really tough road to hoe. And then the other reason is the politics part. And that boils down to this. Schools are judged and rated on test scores and mostly standardized test scores that students take. And these can be state level or national level standardized tests. Standardized tests measure things like reading, writing, math, and science, which they should, but personal finance or financial literacy isn't a component of standardized testing. And since schools are based on those, their success or failures are based on test scores, the people who have the power to make change, and this would be school principals, schools, our district superintendents, school board members, and legislators, they're less interested in doing things that aren't going to make schools and districts and states look better. And they only look better by increasing test scores. And those tests, again, don't measure financial literacy. So until that changes, I don't see there being a real push for personal finance as a requirement for graduation.
Well, maybe they can slide some in there occasionally, like for electives or something, to give some of these kids a choice. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the first step, is just to have the class as an elective. So for instance, in my school, I would say about 15 to 20% of the students will take personal finance before graduation. That's not great, but it's better than zero. Right. Some schools don't even have it as an option. So that's step one, is to just get it into the class offerings. And then the next step would be to have it be a requirement.
Now, you mentioned in the bio that you sent over to me before this that you're a personal finance advocate. So what was like the tipping point? So did something happen to you maybe that made you make that transition, maybe like the FIRE movement, the financial independent retire early movement, or what was that, you think?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It was the FIRE movement and my introduction to that community. So I always knew in the back of my head that personal finance education needed to be a focus for high school students. And we needed to change the system so that it would become a requirement. Because I think I had a pretty good understanding and skill set around my own personal finances and how important that was. But it wasn't until about 6 or 7 years ago that I was introduced to the early financial independence movement. Some people call that the FIRE movement. Was introduced to real estate investing and other forms of passive income. And this whole idea that you don't have to work until you're 65 if you do things a little different. Once my wife and I really started engaging in those communities, and specifically the Bigger Pockets community and the Choose FI community, and really started eating everything up, blogs and podcasts and books and stuff. At that point, I really realized, I can't sit on the sidelines anymore and not advocate. I need to go out and really do my part to push for some change. And I did that, again, not with much success because of these roadblocks we talked about earlier, which is really why I decided to write a book and started communities, because I thought, well, if I can't make change in my classroom or in my school or in my school district, then maybe I can help advocate for personal finance education, on the internet, online, digitally. And so that's where the book and the community came into play. And it's been going for about 5 or 6 years.
Well, since you mentioned the book, let's get into that a little bit right now. First to a million. So is it available everywhere now, or
It is. It's
okay?
available everywhere, as well as there's a workbook that goes along with the book, and they're both. Well, I should say the book is available everywhere. The workbook is currently only available on biggerpockets.com. BiggerPockets is the publisher of both of them.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about the mission of the book.
To put it simply, the mission of the book is to help young people live their best lives. And I believe that we all can make our best decisions when we know our options. And right now, very, very few people know that early financial independence is an option. Most people just think working until you're 65 is the only option, or maybe 60 or right in there.
Mm-hmm.
So the book is about opening the eyes of young people, the readers, to say, working until you're 65 is one option, but there are many others where you can do things differently, different strategies and tactics and topics, so that you can reach financial independence sometimes decades before 65. I don't, however, tell them that's what they should do or have to do. I would never do that. The mission of the book is just to say, here are the options, and then you get to choose what you think is best for you and your future goals.
When I finished dental school and a residency, typically when we get out, well, at least for me, I only thought as far as retirement, there was only one option. And that's what the financial advisor, told me was, hey, you work until you're 65 or 70. Hey, if you're diligent enough and you max out your 401k, then, by the time you're 65 or 70, you can retire. That was the only option I knew.
Yeah.
Right. And then I started learning about these other options, like what you're talking about, that with FI and the potential of retiring early, investing for cash flow instead of accumulation, that sort of thing. So what do you think is, because of this, why do you think it's so important for kids to just know about the concept of FI or financial independence?
One young person, for example, let's say his name is John. If John, let's say, reads First to a Million and decides that, yeah, I think I would like to pursue this path of early financial independence, that's in alignment with what I see my future being. And then let's say John reaches financial independence at age 35, meaning that he no longer has to work. Chances are he's not going to stop at age 35 and never do anything again, never make any contribution or never be productive or earn another dollar. He's going to just now be able to do those things on his own terms. So maybe at age 35, he decides that, I've always wanted to do this. This is my passion, this type of business or this pursuit. And now that I'm financially independent and I don't have to have a job, I'm not dependent on that paycheck every month, I'm gonna switch gears. I'm gonna go do this, which is something I'm really passionate about. And if more people have the opportunity to do that and they're actually following their passion, their dream, and oftentimes those involve some sort of giving back, helping others, volunteering, charity work, in some form of giving back, then I think, if you multiply that times many, many different people who have that option now, I think our world becomes a better place, where the opportunity for people to really engage with what they feel they're called to do, now that they don't have to worry about paying their bills every month because they are financially independent. If they pursue those paths, then I think it unlocks a ton of human potential to make better contributions to the world as a whole.
There was one chapter in the book, I think it was the second chapter, and it was called Why You Should Tell the American Dream to F Off, which, as you can imagine, it caught my attention, which I'm sure it catches most people's attention. So tell us a little bit about that. Where did that come from? This whole concept of the, we're fed the American dream, right? But then now you're telling it to go elsewhere.
Yeah. The title of that chapter was intentionally meant to catch the attention of the reader, who's a teenager. It also catches the attention of us adults as well. And I've gotten some slack for that, by the way, but I stand by it firmly. So the chapter talks about, and it is chapter 2, so it's very early in the book. It's introducing the idea of this other option, because like we've already talked about, we're all sold the bill of goods that the American dream path, the typical American dream pathway, the only American dream pathway is to work until you're 65. And there is nothing wrong with that. In that chapter, I say that is a tried and true pathway that has worked for millions of people, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I think you should know there are other options. There are other options that get you to financial independence way before age 65. And so the idea of telling the American dream to F off is about deciding for yourself if that typical pathway is right for you. And if it's not, then saying, okay, I don't want to do that. I say, no, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to follow this other pathway because it makes more sense for me. There are, the American dream has many different components. The idea that anybody can come to America and make a living and be successful. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the pathway that we're told that you have to work till you're 65. That's the part that we should tell to F off and do things our own way.
Now, something else that I thought was interesting in the book, and it was actually a chapter in there about, I think it was actually just called happiness. Mm-hmm. So when you're scanning through the list of chapters, so how does something like this go with FI and personal finance concepts?
It's a great question. The chapter on happiness was a fun one to write. And I think it fits in there. It's a very important part of an early financial independence journey, because if someone's going to do things differently to reach early financial independence, there has to be some motivation there. And for most people who are trying to achieve early financial independence or have done that, it's about having the freedom of time. That's what financial independence gets you. It gets you your time back, which is a very valuable, unlimited resource. We only have so much time. We don't know how much it is, but once time is spent, we don't get to spend it again. That chapter asks the reader, tells them to, make a list of the things that bring you the most happiness, whether these are things, people, activities, hobbies, places, whatever, pets. What are the things, when you're with that, doing that, engaged with that, you are really, truly happy? Write out 10 things in any particular order. And then when they're done with that exercise, I tell them to go back and I say, look at that list and see if any of those take a considerable amount of money. And usually they don't, because the things that bring us happiness are pretty simple, like spending time with friends, spending time with my kids, spending time with my friends, spending the day in the park, traveling perhaps. Traveling can be expensive, but it doesn't have to be. So the idea that financial independence can get you more time back, and then you can choose to spend that time doing the things that bring you more happiness. That's the motivation for doing things differently, because achieving early FI is not easy. If it was, everyone would do it. Mm-hmm. There are some sacrifices. There are some things that you need to do that are more difficult. And some people will judge you if you're being frugal or if you're not spending all the money you make, which is, again, something we're taught that we should do as Americans. We should spoil ourselves, and we deserve to spend all the money we make. And so if you're doing things differently, it's not easy, but the reward on the other end is, I think, more happiness.
Who do you think needs to find the information that you put in the book? Is it like a young kid, young adult, their parents, all the above? Who needs it?
I think everyone should be aware of the early financial independence options. So my book is specifically for teenagers. However, I think anyone who is just beginning to learn about early financial independence strategies and options, I think my book would be very valuable. I don't even if they're 30, 40, 50 years old, it's a great introductory read for someone who's just starting to learn about early financial independence and everything that falls under that umbrella. And there's many topics that do.
We have one teenager that's in the public school, one teenager in the private school. I grew up, and my wife both grew up public school all the way. So, I realize that what you're teaching actually breaks from the traditional, quote, public school teaching. Have you been challenged or questioned by any parents or teachers or maybe school board members about what you're teaching?
I haven't. I do teach at a public high school. Mm-hmm. But I would say, Jeff, even private high schools don't teach this stuff. They might be a little more likely to teach personal finance, but they're not teaching early financial independence concepts. This is really new stuff for everybody, for even adults. And to my knowledge, First to a Million, my book, is the only book out there that is for teenagers specifically about early financial independence. Because it's kind of a new movement, or newer, only maybe 10 or 15 years old. So I haven't gotten any pushback. I definitely have parents who are interested. More often what happens is the parent is thanking me for talking about these different types of things. And I've even had parents come to me saying they want to know more because they're not aware of these options. And they might ask me some questions that they have.
Nice. Well, also, I think it's real cool that you're able to actually get the Bigger Pockets community to publish the book. And for those that don't know, Bigger Pockets probably, would you say it's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, online community regarding real estate?
Yes, definitely. And
Okay.
It's grown into a community of, it's not just real estate focused anymore, although that's a big part of what they do, but it's grown into all the different, it includes all the different components of early financial independence. They have many different books and podcasts and blog articles about everything. So yeah, I feel very fortunate and I'm very grateful to Bigger Pockets for publishing my book.
So I noticed on your website, and I think in the book as well, you've got this community that you created, and it has a unique name, Sheiks Freaks. So tell us a little bit about that and what's actually involved with that community.
The freak is a theme throughout the entire book, First to a Million. And that's based in the fact that if someone's young, especially teenage, and they are motivated enough to learn about their financial future, they're motivated enough to spend time watching YouTube videos, engaging in content, reading a book, that is very different. They're unique. They're exceptional and in a good way. So they're kind of freakish, right? They're different than their typical young person. So that's where the term comes from. The Sheiks Freaks online community is a place where young people can go. And the Sheiks Freaks community is, I like to say, 15 to 25. So it goes a little bit older than, say, the book that's targeted just for teenagers. So the community is just for young people who are motivated, highly motivated to learn more about their financial future and to engage in strategies that can lead them to early financial independence. Like, for instance, real estate investing. That's a big piece of the Sheiks Freaks community. But there's also things like frugality, side hustles, earning extra income, mindset, entrepreneurship, and many different other topics that are discussed in the community. So this is a place where they can all come together, be around like-minded people, and offer advice, receive advice. There's accountability, and feel like they're not alone. Because a lot of the young people I work with in the community, they say to me all the time, in my home group of friends, nobody else is interested in this stuff except me. But in the community, that's it. Like, they're all interested in this type of stuff. So that's where they feel like they can really connect. And there have been some very powerful lifelong relationships built in the community where people have met each other and became very close friends.
Speaking of that community, can you maybe give us a couple of, maybe off the top of your head, a couple of examples of some of the kids maybe that have taken what you're teaching in the Sheiks Freaks and have actually had success with it? Maybe share a couple of stories.
I love highlighting the success stories of the members of Sheiks Freaks, but I also want to put out there that the young person doesn't have to be one of these high-level success stories to get value or to contribute to the community. So, for instance, there's one young person. His name is Jabbar. He's just turned 20. He's actually in the Marines full-time, and he just recently closed on his second real estate property. He bought his first one at age 19 that he's house hacking, and He bought his second one as a short-term rental. He bought it with a partner that he met in the Sheiks Freaks community. And they're managing that short-term rental. It's in the Smoky Mountains, but they don't live there. So they're managing it long distance. And that's a great success story. And he is crushing it. And he's a very driven, inspirational young man. But the community isn't just for him. It's for any young person. Maybe they don't want to buy their first real estate property until they're 25 or even 30. That's okay. Or maybe they more want to start a business or turn a side hustle into a business. Or maybe they just want to learn about how to invest in the stock market, right? And so the community is for all types of people. We also have young people who have started successful podcasts. We have young people who have become influencers on social media. One of the members, Leo, has over 1 million followers on TikTok. That all happened while he was a member of Sheiks Freaks. He was actually the very first member. He was the member number one in the community. It's not just the community that got him there. You know, he's a hustler and a grinder, and he's worked very hard. And there's other influences in his life, obviously. But there's a lot of great success stories. But I think the best benefit is just being around those types of people, even if the young person, the member, isn't doing what they're doing, which is pretty exceptional. They're going to be more likely to have success in their future by surrounding themselves with people who are of the same mindset.
Gotcha. So how long have you been teaching for?
I've been teaching high school for 19 years.
Okay. So you've been teaching for 19 years. You've just released the books. You've got the community. So where do you think you go from here? What does the future hold for Dan Sheiks? Do you keep teaching? Do you grow the community? Do you do both? What do you think?
That is a question that my wife and I talk about almost every day. This year, 2021, has been an amazing year for us. We had our first child. We have a 7-month-old boy. Thank you. This will be his first Christmas and holiday season, so we're super excited for that. I also published the 2 books, the book and the workbook, and we've really started. I've really started focusing on the Sheiks Freaks community. My wife manages all our real estate, which is a big time job as well, because we are real estate investors. So next year, I'll still be teaching. I love my job, and until that stops being true, I don't see myself stopping or quitting my teaching job. Whether I need to do it or not, if I find fulfillment and I enjoy it, I'll keep doing that. We also do want to spend effort building the Sheiks Freaks community and seeing where that goes. Now that the book is out there, I do expect, I hope, that to see more engagement and more membership in the Sheiks Freaks community. And I definitely, my role in that is more of a facilitator or maybe like a mentor role. And I really would like to see that community grow, just because it helps, like the aforementioned success stories, it helps people reach their goals. So what I can't do is continue doing both of them full time, which is kind of what the last year has been like. So I'll be bringing on some help, hiring some people to help me with the Sheiks Freaks stuff. We'll continue doing them both. And we'll also, time will tell how well the book does. Hopefully, it reaches a lot of young people.
Excellent. So for those out there that are interested, how do they maybe connect with you or learn more about your book and your community?
If people are interested in the book, First to a Million, which is a teenager's guide to achieving early financial independence, you can go to biggerpockets.com/teen. It's also available elsewhere like Amazon. The workbook, like I said, is only available on Bigger Pockets website. If they buy the book and the workbook together on biggerpockets.com, they'll get a discount, which is a nice bonus. As far as getting in contact with me, I'm an email guy, so just shoot me an email at dan@sheiksfreaks.com. But I also am on Bigger Pockets and LinkedIn and Instagram every day, so they can send me a message on one of those platforms. If anyone's interested in the Sheiks Freaks community, they are a young person or they know somebody who's 15 to 25, then just go to sheiksfreaks.com, our main website, and there's information there about how to join the community.
Okay. And I'll make sure I'll put the links below this video. So anybody listening to this that wants to, y'all can connect with Dan there. So Dan, thanks so much for spending time with us today. And thanks for all you do for all of our young, for basically the future, our future of this country.
You're welcome. And thanks, Jeff, for having me and helping me share the message, and really appreciate it. And kudos to you for this YouTube channel. I hope things continue to grow and keep crushing it.